Man, I've got to say, despite today's topic, I am fucking ebullient. And not just because of the election in and of itself. I mean, preferred result, and if it's not your preferred result, then I'm really happy that you're unhappy. I want you to be less happy in this area of your life.
I
and
hope you
other
have
areas.
a terrible evening.
I could extend that to the week, month, year.
4 of them, maybe. Possibly even 8.
I could extend that to a lifetime, but I like to leave room for redemption. After 4 years of really just your emotional and spiritual shins getting kicked every day.
I understand what it feels like to be trigging the libs or whatever the fuck they call it, because it's like a fucking drug.
It's
Just
really nice.
Going through fucking photos of people with Confederate flags sobbing.
And, I just hold out hope in my heart of hearts that given the outgoing president's personality type, and I know he leans towards denial, and denial's where he's going, but there's a chance he just kills himself.
He just fucking
outright
kills himself.
Just fucking does it. And I will be walking on sunshine. There'll be a picture of me in a history textbook, just 2 thumbs up. I'll have a smile that does not seem like proportions work on a natural physical human.
I would love to see what the game makers have to say about, the chances that he fucking isekais himself on the way out. It has to be a non-zero chance, right?
Yeah, it's one of those long belts where maybe you could win the pot. Or maybe you could be one of these idiots on poll that bet half of their life savings that people really wanted to make America great again.
And
I
then
feel
lose half
fucking
your life
fantastic.
savings. Oh man, it's been wild. Like I was taking a walk with Morgan, and we were just discussing. This is weird. I haven't had an intrusive thought in like 2 days. What do I do with myself? There's all this mental real estate that's now just empty.
Yeah, you might. I don't know. You could write poetry now, I guess.
I think I might write poetry. Maybe I'll read Achewood finally.
That's one thing I'm thinking. I'm going to read the less good Dune books.
I'm still working my way through the first one. It's a little dense, a little heavy on the proper nouns, but it is pretty cool.
Ah, yes, the Shmararak walked down the path of the Christ Hamid, seizing his double knife into the unvoid.
It was the fault of the
Jamaric Vangors.
Fuck, I can't do it.
It's fine. Nonsense is an art.
I'm such a fucking terrible improv artist, I have to tell you. But if I'm given time to prep, as I was for this episode, then oh man.
Oh yeah. Sam's loaded up with silver bullets today, which is good because I went to fucking pre-cure hell and back, and I'm pretty sure I have some psychological after effects. I didn't even try today. I think I'm wearing some kind of reddish pink. It leaves its mark on you. It's like lycanthropy.
I'm thinking that you have to keep your door closed and put a towel under the door because you sparkle at night and it'd keep up the rest of the apartment.
I keep finding these footprints. They're in just these mud-tracked footprints in and out of my apartment, going into the last open toy store in Brooklyn. And I'm starting to find dolls, Sam. I'm finding dolls scattered throughout my home.
All over the fucking house.
And the labels say they're different characters. They're supposed to be different characters, but I swear to God, I couldn't tell the fucking difference with a gun to my head.
They're all so fucking pink, and they're all so fucking squeaky. How am I supposed to be able to tell the fucking difference?
I went on the TV Tropes page after I watched that, by the way. And I'm not sure, it seems to have a really strong community. Like, just a horde of man-children and actual children. And what's crazy about it is I was reading the concept, and it seems that the new series that I watched doesn't do the thing that it's known for. Like, the gimmick is supposed to be that they have to transform together and they can't do it by themselves or some shit. And then they have to, fucking tag team plotline, try to get along kind of shit.
But that's just not the case in this series?
Oh, no, people transform on their own all the time, and I'm left there wondering, Jesus Christ, did I watch a bad Precure?
Maybe this is like somewhat analogous to the Pokemon games getting away from random encounters, and instead of Machamp fucking runs up to you in the wild to push your shit in.
That's very possible. Getting my shit pushed in by Machamp. That's how I felt in the aftermath of the Legend of Korra entry in the Avatar franchise.
Yeah, this one's been a long time coming, and this is not the only episode that we're going to do about
This
it.
is going to be split into, I don't know, somewhere between 2 and 4 parts. It
It's
depends
gonna
where
be
the wind
4.
blows.
It's going to be 4.
Okay, Sam has 4 episodes of thoughts on the Legend of Korra. Hachi fucking machi. I guess I'm just going to dial over to pure punch-up mode.
No, it's going
See,
to...
what's going to happen is Sam's going to say a bunch of facts, and then I'm going to just shout the word butts at the end, and that'll be the format of Weeaboo Hell for a bit.
Before I begin, just one or two things. I have certain, I guess you could call it baggage, tied up with this show. I think, I'm not going to pretend that a whole bunch of my problems with this didn't have something to do with the fact that it is the sequel to the most sacred of sacred cows in Western animation, right? And, just one of my favorite pieces of media in general, Avatar: The Last Airbender. So
yes, for the armchair shrinks among you, those are part of the mental stakes behind this. I think you could very well contend, or very easily contend, that the fact that there is an ancestor that matters makes this show's failures matter more.
yeah, I mean, context is always important, but I do want to be able to judge this show on its own terms as well. You start being in danger of begging the question every now and again. When
Really?
you've got this...
What's wrong with begging the question?
All right, so I got to define begging the question right now, because no one knows what it actually means. Begging the question is when something is used as a reason for itself. It's not inviting the question or inviting an obvious question, as is what it's usually confused for. Begging the question is, person A is an honest person, and I believe what honest people tell me. So when they say that they are an honest person, I believe them because honest people tell the truth, and I believe what they tell me, right?
Oh, so it gets crossed up with a different fallacy a lot. Then.
Yeah. So it's like it's kind of like a circular logic sort of thing. That is what begging the question actually means. So I don't want to start getting into Korra is bad because it is not Avatar: The Last Airbender, and Avatar: The Last Airbender is good, therefore, because Korra is this, removed from Avatar: The Last Airbender, it is not good, right?
Right.
I'm trying to not do that. There are other things. There's plenty of other things, but I'm going to try and not...
If I could steal 3 minutes from your thesis statement, I'm going to do my only boring asshole thing.
Okay.
Only because we're doing 4 episodes on this.
Yes.
It's just some basic ground for people that love the dulcet tones of your voice and don't know what the fuck we're talking about.
Lay the ground.
All right. Cycle back to my childhood. Maybe your childhood, I don't know how fucking old you are. Point is, there was a show called Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is in the simplest terms, a sort of A to B epic fantasy story with a martial arts aesthetic / choreography, and a fantasy setting in which 4 classical elements, people can punch each other with them. It is very fondly remembered. There are overall themes of balance, nonviolence, reconciling the past, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, widely beloved, including us, we have a show called Weeaboo Hell, so you can sort of tell where our fucking investment in this lies. This is one of the sort of shows that is frequently cited when one refers to anime as sort of more of a general movement than a specific geopolitical fucking product or what have you.
Yeah, I would definitely classify Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra as anime.
Hence the fucking topic of this in the first place. Now, that's Avatar, right? Also follows a kid named Aang. Not that important for our purposes.
No.
So then here's the sequel show announced called The Legend of Korra. Okay, this slots relatively naturally into the concept. The idea is this guy's reincarnated over time, so he might be reincarnated into this new character who is this water tribe. There are 4 classical elements. There's a water tribe, fire, nation,
Earth
air,
Kingdom,
commune.
Air nomads, yeah.
But the point is, this was this, again, hotly anticipated because of the sort of legacy this first thing I just established. It tends to inspire a sort of Star Wars, Star Trek-ish type of devotee.
Yes.
Which I guess is to its credit as just an epic fantasy sweep or whatever. And The Legend of Korra is enjoyed in some camps, and in many other camps that I live in, it is less so.
I don't want to use the word reviled. Revile actually feels a little bit too strong a word, but
I also think that reviled implies far fewer flame wars than our present.
yeah, man, I think if I had to describe my attitude towards The Legend of Korra, it's more extremely disappointed rather than, I hated it. Because Korra is a show that is not bad in the way that a lot of stuff we watch on this is bad. My issue with it is, and always has been, that it makes promises, and then it never ends up delivering on those promises. Now, a lot of this has to do with Avatar and what an impossibly tough act to follow it was. Like, Reich, the creators of Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra, for those who didn't know, they really had their fucking work cut out for them. And were Korra to exist in a vacuum, I bet I'd be just a little bit less hard on a few of the aspects that I have such problems with as it stands. Like, the individual parts are usually good in Legend of Korra. Like, the gags are on average pretty solid. The music is spectacular.
It's interesting that I could never really call this a total 360 failure the way that I kick into some bad shows.
No. This isn't the prequel
Especially when we talk about
trilogy.
the music, by the way. If I were to just call out one standout element that just
the
never
music
lays me down, I never find my son doing blow in the kitchen when it comes to the music in Legend of Korra, which is by, I don't know if it's one guy or two guys, but the unit call themselves the track team.
The track team, same guys as last time, or same guys who did the music for the original series, and it's just better. The music for Legend of Korra is just across the board better than it was for Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah, it's on a unique tile in a lot of the tracks. There's this jazz, martial arts strings.
It's cool, right? No, it does not sound like a whole lot of other things. And it gives this series this really cool musical identity that is very it's very impossible to mistake.
I remember I had a joke when we were actually watching this thing live. They were in the middle of this action sequence that I just could not care about for the life of me. And I just pointed out, like, man, it sounds like something awesome is happening right now.
Check out this fucking woodwind section. The animation, at least in the first season, which is what we are covering tonight. There's just too fucking much to talk about.
Oh yeah, we're just doing
show.
the 12 or 13 episodes that
just the first season, or first book, if you prefer. The animation was really great in the first season. The production design ruled. I absolutely fucking love the look of this show, top to bottom. Like, they never fuck up there.
That's true. For those of you just joining the franchise here, we're going from I don't know what century would you pin the original series at?
The original series seemed to take place I don't know, like anywhere from the 16th
old
century
times,
to
ancient,
it was just older times. There's no guns,
and here we are just sort of thrown into this 1920s
the 20s,
thing.
yeah.
Like, you basically get everything except gunpowder for karate reasons.
Yeah. There's no guns in this show, but I respect that choice. Yeah, I wanted to shout out in particular because I'm not going to be easy on this series, so I'd like to get out of the way just a few things that I really do like about it. I wanted to shout out the fantastic character designs and how they kind of evolve over the course of the series. Like, in visual media, one of my favorite things that to see is when character designs change over the course of the series, as it means reflecting the characters and their arcs. Like, Avatar was great about this, and Korra is, I don't think, any less so. Like, one thing I especially like is that the art style of Korra looks like a slightly more grown-up version of Avatar's art style. Like, everyone's proportions are just a little bit less exaggerated, and it does like this great job of telling you that this will be the same world as before, but the problems the protagonists deal with are going to be more complex than before.
That's true. Yeah, the character designs do a lot of nice work, and I mean, obviously, they achieve just the base goal of character designs and making little endorphins go off in your brain, but they also just carry the character information that they're meant to.
Everyone just also looks very interesting, too. You want characters to have, like, strong silhouettes, and they absolutely fucking do. If you take Korra and turn her into a silhouette, just take all color, shape, or anything besides just, her outline away, like, anyone would be able to recognize her. Same with the rest of the main cast.
Muscular cave woman comes across relatively quickly. It's nice. It's nice.
It's the same with most of the rest of the main cast, for the most part.
Something else I will point at just because of my particular branches of nerdery and Sam mentioned character design, so now it's time for Dinar to talk about violence. But even at the nadir of this show, except for the kaiju thing,
That was fucking stupid, yeah.
The choreo will always have at least interesting maneuvers. It will always be relatively taut. Like, the way people hit each other
It's always
is
gonna
cool.
look cool,
You will
yeah.
hit a threshold in this show where why they're doing it and what happens afterwards doesn't fucking matter anymore.
Yeah, it's not always that they're telling a great story with the action, with the fight scenes. This, but they always look real good.
At the show's very worst, you'll be watching a interesting round of Blaz Blue before someone says something fucking stupid.
And they do, like, just mountingly so. They do. So
Ain't that a kick in the head?
I ended up, by the end of this series, right? I ended up so fucking frustrated with the characters and what had been done to them over the course of the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
With one notable exception, I absolutely love the character of Tenzin, who is, Aang's now middle-aged son, right?
Out of the better characters, he is one of the only ones that is not randomly assassinated.
Yes,
which
yeah.
is funny because someone tries to assassinate him later. But
Like,
in a
literally
very
tried to
literal
fucking
sense.
murder. Like, I know, no, there's this fucking... I've been calling it the fucking mobile character assassination squad, which fucking rolls up pretty early on in season 2, and I feel like they never really did wrong by Tenzin. Like, I love that he's basically the opposite of Aang, that he's aware of this, and that it infuriates him, and he gets mad whenever someone brings it up. I resonate with how weighed down he is, by his responsibilities. Like, I get that a whole fucking ton. Like, how he's not above being envious of his own children at times.
Yeah, he does not get those 10 carefree years that Aang rode through.
No, it's just always been, like, he grew up with the weight of the fucking world on his shoulders, and it's just still fucking there. And I also like how he strokes his beard a bunch. I do that. In book 3, right? We're going to keep it mostly contained to talking about book 1 today, but in book 3, he has this one fight, which I rate as the best fight in the entire show, and honestly, it's in the top 3 for the entire franchise. Like,
The Last Stand?
The Last Stand. Like, the depths to which
I would rave about it, but if we're doing 3 more of these fuckers, I need to save my talking points like precious bullets, so...
We'll get there when we get there. I would call it, like, a contender for the top 3 in the franchise. The Last Agni Kai still wins. It is a sacred cow for a reason. Premise of the first season, just so that we can get this out of the way, is that Korra needs to come to Republic City, which is this, kind of Shanghai, New York, like 20s metropolis.
York, by Chicago,
so, something like that. So that she can study airbending. She has one more element left to master. That is the last one, and it's not coming too easy to her. Meanwhile, she discovers this conspiracy by this group called the Equalists, who are a whole bunch of non-benders who wish to...
are dubiously oppressed by their society.
We'll get there.
Okay.
I've got something for this, trust me. Who are fighting for social equality for non-benders, right? In a world, where, like, bending is this big fucking deal. Their whole position is that, like, non-benders have gotten the short end of the stick.
And they are led by the mysterious and enigmatic masked man, Amon.
Who's got the coolest fucking character design.
He has a mask that, with different choices, could have printed them money for a while.
Yeah, they didn't make those choices.
Anyway, he has the mysterious ability to, in a manner akin to Aang at the end of the original series, permanently remove someone's bending. What does this mean, dear readers? That's an interesting open question, isn't it? You could almost call it a mystery box. Boy, you sure want to know what's in the mystery box, don't you?
Yes, that's Amon is interesting only for so long as the promises that are made about him have not been broken yet.
Right.
But that happens later on in the season. We're gonna get there. We're gonna talk about relationship stuff now. Because that starts up pretty fucking early.
So shipping... I don't know, the inmates are running the asylum in terms of the balance of time that shipping takes up in this show. Maybe I could just live with that as a shift in focus if it were handled as deftly as things
well.
that used to take up time.
Yeah. When we were rewatching this, right, the first bit of was when there's that first bit of, sort of like flirty dialogue on Bolin's part, and I'm like, oh, right, this shit again.
It's not the most elegant.
I'm not going to bemoan the show's choice to have relationship drama and have it be a bigger part of it than it was in Avatar, as I do not necessarily believe that doing so was at odds with what the show was trying to do. The problem, I think, is
it's a human thing, and they were, I think, committed to the idea of having some of the characters' concerns be more teenage, both into things that they...
Yeah.
Both into less important and more important things that they worry about.
I think the problem for me was how the romantic subplots were all positioned relative to the rest of the series' actions. Like, in season 1, too much time is dedicated to the fucking love triangle.
I want you to fucking imagine. I want you to imagine that the plane has just hit the tower.
God.
And the fucking head of the CIA bats his eyes at FBI Coon and says, "Hey, are you up to anything later?"
It always feels like
while George Bush Jr. just drops the flowers he was holding for CIA Coon.
It's
in case you wonder what it's like in my brain, by the way, it's a lot of shit like that. But
yeah, well, I feel like the relationship drama always seems like more of a priority for both writer and character alike. More so than it should have been. And I don't know, maybe if they had reordered or revisited a couple of the scenes, like maybe it might have worked better. Like maybe this was a fucking pacing thing. I don't know.
I mean, like, a lot of the relationship issues in the show are just anchored to the fact that Asami is a key, like, linchpin or waifu option or whatever the fuck you want to call them of their relationship diagram, but she only really exists for the relationship diagram in a sort of plot-driven action-adventure thing, and you're just constantly have thrusts in your mind, why is this human being here? Why are they here in this scene? And when I say that they don't have a purpose in this sequence, I don't mean in, like, a Lois Lane kind of way, because she's not going to be their, like, fist-fighting parasite either. But constantly present in plot threads where they add nothing, including wit or charm.
I'm a little cautious going after Asami because she has some fucking fans. But she's just so fucking...
Everything we make fun of as fucking fans.
She's so fucking boring is the problem. Like, she's a mobile plot point with a power fist. Her personality is this cipher for whatever they need her to, like, be, do, or feel in a given scene. And the most I can say about her that's not a comment on her circumstances is that she's kind of sweet and she doesn't appreciate people betraying her trust. That's just not enough, because you can say that about pretty much anyone who isn't an out-and-out dickhead. Throughout the first season, at least, she's defined by her circumstances and not her personality. Like, she's rich, she's involved with Mako, her dad is an equalist. I think this carries through to at least season 2, if not further. Not necessarily those circumstances, but just her circumstances.
Oh, there's a lot of her and her dad in season 4, isn't there?
We'll get there. We'll get there. Like, you can make the argument that she's an everyman or something, but I never got the sense that we were meant to identify with her. She's just there. She was there to be the non-bender on the team. She's there. There are all sorts of roles or spots on the roster that needed to be filled, and they kind of just came up with a character to do that, and that is Asami. And I just,
on a scale of 1 to 10, she sure exists.
She tastes very much like bread. Toast, perhaps.
I don't know, man. Bread can have all these redolent flavors caked into them, or seeds, various mixtures of yeast. There is no interesting crunchy shell around Asami. There is simply content. Grist for the content mill.
It's the worst fucking thing that I could say about a character is that they inspire fucking nothing in me. I don't even hate Asami. There's nothing there for me to fucking hate. Like, usually if in an otherwise good series there's a character that I really fucking dislike, or that I used to like, and, you know, suddenly I do not like them anymore, that tends to be an issue of, like, there's some idea that I just fundamentally disagree with about, you know, what they're doing with that character. And that happens with Mako, but I keep saying we'll get to that, and we will. But with
We're going on a
Asami,
tour of the islands, only like getting throttled by Jeff Cobb or some shit.
with Asami, she just, I don't know, she just sort of, whenever they need a fucking C plot, right?
And I know that doesn't really sound like a high stakes bad character, and maybe in a sense it isn't, but the thing is that the romance is such a bigger gear in this show.
That's the thing.
It is as if they decided to change the action comedy ratio to like Rush Hour. Then suddenly Bolin's terribleness would become more important because he's like the comic heavy, and every bad line he spews out suddenly hate more because suddenly it's just a constant runner of
Poor fucking Bolin. Like
they tried.
I found him.
They tried harder than with Asami.
He was way more irritating than I remember him being. I think a whole lot of my fucking maybe perhaps tainted memories of him and his character come from just where I know his character arc is going and just the bad and awful places that they take his character arc throughout basically every season except
that
3.
may be at work because in this first season he is merely
He's like
grading in a tish kind of way.
Yeah, like he's
not really dragging down our narrative.
He's fine. He doesn't add a whole bunch. Like I find that
except getting cucked.
Like Korra, Mako, and Tenzin, right? Are I felt the three the most interesting players in season 1. So
true.
And Bolin, he's like along for the ride. But his gags, right, are all basically just Sokka gags, right? They're played like the Sokka gags from Avatar: The Last Airbender. But for whatever reason, they are so infinitely less charming.
I think there are a few things that could be kicking the charm in the kneecaps.
I think that this in part has to do with the fact that they had the inimitable Jack Decina in Avatar: The Last Airbender, and PJ Byrne is just, this isn't a knock against him, but he's just not the same talent that Decina was. And Sokka...
PJ Byrne is on a similar level, if you just ignore things like, intonation of voice, the material given, timing, causing endorphins to be fired off in my brain.
I don't want to be unfair to him because I think he does a good job with what he's given. It's just that they're trying to make lightning strike twice a little bit, and they shouldn't be.
That's the thing. They also just have way less of an idea of what they're doing with him in a narrative sense, like a character point A to point B kind of sense. Like,
yeah.
I don't know, book 1, Avatar is essentially Sokka discovering the world outside of his backyard.
Well, I like that, yeah,
which is good, yeah,
and they do it really early on. They give him this short but important character arc in those first 2 episodes, and
they gave him like these little islands. Like, there's one episode where he basically has to get over his thing of pointing and shouting the word witch. They have the way better than I remembered it, like sexism Aesop episode. Like he's just. The whole world is sort of coming at him at once, and that had a role. And that honestly, it was a easy position for someone to be a comic heavy without being a moron, which is just he was a little sheltered and did not think of himself as such.
Well, what I liked about him is that he was very much probably the smartest person on that team.
Yeah.
Right? And thus him kind of being a goofy dude, provide like a fun contrast is provided there. Bolin, on the other hand, is a fucking moron, as we will learn.
Bolin is breathing with intense effort, and we should all be proud of every manual breath. Again
and again and again in this fucking series, Bolin he just fails to do the smart thing every single fucking time.
The smartest thing that Bolin does is photosynthesis.
A man who has made himself like a plant. I think that was Sartre. He was the one who was talking about like plant people, rock people, and neither people.
I'm not sure. I'm not that familiar with Sartre.
There you go. Right.
I watched Precure yesterday instead.
Oh right, yeah. Weeaboo Hell, not literature hell. Do we want to talk about pro bending?
The pro bending thing is.
It feels like a cheap shot. It feels like fucking low-hanging fruit is what it does.
It's a weird discussion point because I feel like it gets conflated with other things wrong with the show. I feel like the rudderlessness of a lot of the relationship just gets pinned on the pro-bending stuff existing. The pro-bending thing is it's a fine frame for various stunts. They maybe could have done a better job of either making sure you knew the rules going in to be invested in these matches or what have you. But that's I don't think that's a flaw in the pro-bending concept. I don't know, it is paced out weirdly, but if there are overall pacing problems, I guess what I'm saying is that as a critic, I sometimes feel wary of ever saying you should not have had this element or narrative goal entirely. Like, it's about the execution, and I think there's a version of the universe where there's an interesting story about Jesus playing basketball.
Well, here's my issue. I'm kind of gonna argue.
I guess because I've watched so much fucking wrestling, I think you can just weave narratives into sports stories to any cracked out extent, and I don't know, maybe there could have just been more social ramifications of their wins and losses. Like, what if the team they're fighting, like, in their off time publicly backs harsh crackdowns against equalists? They're doing a fucking reverse Muhammad Ali thing.
Well, the issue is that the way that the series is written, right? The issue is that the emotional stakes of pro bending are just so much less than literally everything else going on in this season.
Oh, and yes, pro bending does suffer when I said about the 9/11 thing, where
Like,
after the second plane hits the second tower, there is a long pause, and then the Secretary of the Interior dribbles twice, and throws a jumper.
like, it ties into a couple of character arcs, right? And it's how, you know, Mako and Bolian are introduced to the series, and, you know, like, there's a reason that they're, you know, into it. It's like their ticket out, whatever the hell. But like
the whole little Oliver Twist side story.
Lordy me, I feel like they could have found something else to do the job that had anything to do with where the season was going, because it just doesn't. Like, at best, you could argue that pro bending is like this bread and circuses type deal that keeps people from focusing on the real problems with society. But, like, what real problems?
That doesn't even work, because their real problem is people resenting fucking benders. It would be like if we had a sport that consisted of people throwing fucking money at each other.
I'm trying to fucking get into
other than behind the scenes football.
I'm putting on my devil's advocate hat right here, right? I'm trying to think of, like, the argument that you could make in favor, right, of pro bending. You know, what kind of metaphor they were trying for, what, you know, point they were trying to make, and it could be seen as this sort of, you know, almost kind of celebration of bender supremacy or something like that, although it's never treated like that in the narrative.
They sort of do at one point. When they 9/11, the fucking Super Bowl of pro bending, they do have that little rant. These are supposed to represent the greatest benders of your city, but they are corrupt and rabble.
Yeah.
That does happen.
I don't know, it's a fucking sport.
When I break it down, like, I look at individual episodes trying to apply it.
Mm-hmm.
Where it survives the best is just its initial usage with the airbending plot.
Yeah, and that first little episode right there. I remember I liked that episode a whole lot.
It was well done there. It was caked in a very natural, straightforward way, and I think that works. Maybe if you had taken the highlight or the point of the 5 or so pro-bending, like, episodes or little mini arcs.
There were so fucking many of them.
And it condensed them to just 3 strong points where the other 2 are as strong as at first. Oh, she's learned to do the airbending motion thing. The element would survive better. It suffers from being dragged out, and it suffers from being associated with a whole lot of other stuff. For example, the relationship drama gets caked into their pro-bending results.
Yeah, I'm wondering how much of is it pod racing bad? I feel like it's not necessarily pod racing bad, but it's very difficult to dodge the association.
It is less arbitrary than pod racing.
It seems a little bit less arbitrary than pod racing.
It is way more tied into what's going on and where people go as people than the pod racing-ish. Now, if pod racing was a 3-race circuit where you see every qualifier, then you would start getting fucking pro-bending problems. I guess the other thing is that there are elements that don't get that much time that maybe were needed for this show's interior health, right?
Yes.
Like the actual... And tell me if I'm stepping over on your diagram here, because then I'll just sit on my hands.
We're almost there.
Okay.
I know what you're about to bring up. We're almost fucking there. Because I want to tie it into Amon, right? So I think a few episodes into this, we get this episode called The Rally. I really like this episode, right? It's well plotted, it's suspenseful, it has some very good character beats, and it raises some interesting ideas. And yet, in retrospect, I kind of hate it because it's emblematic of Legend of Korra's biggest issue, which is that it wants to have all of this discourse and historical allegory about all the political revolutions of the 19th and early 20th centuries, which is really cool, right? I'm a history buff. I love seeing shit like that. But it will go all in on these conversations in the first half of every season and then find a way to avoid drawing any conclusions about them by the time the finale rolls around. And not even a, like, you're going to have to make up your own mind kind of way. It'll find all these little tricks, I guess, to sidestep them.
I used to have a little dishonest summary of this, where I would say it would just land on the status quo answer to every fucking issue. But that's not even what it does. It's like I say, it just sort of veers out before it hits a team.
Yeah,
I would almost admire kind of the testicular fortitude. If Korra planted her feet down in that kitty pose.
Things are exactly fine the way they are. And I'm going to be a force for not change.
Like, if this were the centrist Cerberus the Aardvark, it would be kind of fucking wild.
I would call it classical conservatism right there. So Amon's ideology, right? His whole kind of vague Marxist Occupy, whatever. His ideology is never really
Occupy, bending,
civic.
Yeah.
His ideology is never answered with an antithesis. He's just revealed to be a fraud, and his motives are then left kind of ambiguous or something. We'll get to that. Nothing in his backstory that we're learned about him honestly connects him to his motivations in the here and now. So you get the sense that he was just some power hungry dude with an unusual plan.
And at this point, one might be tempted to point back at Ozai, who was sort of a one-dimensional nutter. But for one thing, Ozai is really more one of those elemental evil.
Yeah, no,
kind of force of point. He is
just evil. He is a force of nature. There's just he is the idea of empire.
The other thing is that he is the figurehead of an absolute monarchy, which is way more subject to the whims and character of an individual than, say, a collectivist movement where when someone gets their jick jacked, someone else just steps in and says, okay, now we're in the real revolution. Before this was the practice revolution. Henshin a go-go, baby. I miss Beautiful Joe. I love those games. All right.
They were great. Yeah, we just never have to end up reckoning with what he was talking about. And the conversation that ends this season has to do more with Korra's character arc and the whole airbending thing, which I think that was a way less interesting conversation. So what I'm saying is that if you're going to put a political allegory in this and have it be as big of a deal as it is, then you have to commit to it. Otherwise, like, what is it doing there?
And this political allegory, his whole thing is cached in this idea of non-bender oppression.
Yeah,
with the exception of their response to the riot scene, a scene I'll give points because it actually is them doing the things they're talking about in this show. I'm gonna spend so much time shitting on this. I'm going to give them their freebies. Okay.
I don't like it, and I'll get to why. But like, yeah, how harder were things for non-benders in Republic City or the wider world?
That whole thing is weird to me. We spend all this time on who wants to drill down who, where, or when, and we just don't really get that day-to-day texture. It's a 2-minute throwaway scene.
No,
that people just need of like, man.
Yeah, no indication.
There's just no non-bender fucking sign by the water fountain or something.
Nothing is ever really baked into the world building at all. When and they paid so much fucking attention otherwise to the world building, it feels like a massive fucking oversight.
Like even something as like blunt and wide sweeping as like a fucking 90s X-Men cartoon just opens up with Jubilee trying to dick around a mall and getting floyded for it by a giant robot.
Yeah, just no indication is ever given that things are any harder for non-benders. Like when here's the thing, that scene that you're talking about, when Tarlok tries to impose a curfew on non-benders, and like harshly breaks up, a what he's calling a riot, but is just a peaceful protest. It comes out of fucking nowhere, and you can clearly hear the writers talking through him in their desperation to retcon a justification for the equalist ideology. Because up to now, there was no reason for the
it was a lot of
equalists to feel the way they did.
Also, I think they were trying to go for some kind of intersectional thing with this point I'm about to make here, but it's kind of weird and stupid. But when we're talking about the social repression of non-benders in this structure, the only millionaires we get on this fucking show are all non-benders.
I was gonna...
On a show where the only non-Ozai monarch we ever saw was a non-bender. On a show where the Water Tribe princess was a non-bender.
It just never seems like the social inequality that they say is there is actually there. Like, up to when Tarlok, breaks up that riot, right? Up to then, all we'd really seen was a couple of gangsters shaking down a market stall. And it seems to be implied that the owner of this stall is a non-bender, right? So he's at the mercy of, like, these three bender gangsters. It really just seems like it's more of an organized crime problem than a, like, here's me, I'm a first-class citizen. Here's you, non-bender, you are a second-class citizen. And a dude with a megaphone insisting that there's some sort of social inequality present that intrinsically had to do with bending.
I guess the issue is we see all these reactions and we just don't have
to no actual problem. Yeah, the two most prominent characters that are explicitly shown to be living as second-class citizens are Mako and Bolin. And guess what they can do? They can bend.
And I totally get the idea that's kicking in the back of their mind. Yeah. It's a little more complicated than Amon says it is. Okay, fine. There are these huge crowds of pissed off people, unless they're having some kind of collective pre-Fox News seizure.
Like, in the first episode, right, she runs into this homeless dude in the park, and he would appear not to be a bender. But it's, I don't know, it just, it was all sounding far more like wealth disparity to me than, some sort of built-in inequality between benders and non-benders. Like, and you were saying fucking Hiroshi Sato and like the Cabbage Corp guy, they both seem to be doing pretty well for themselves. Neither of them are benders. Like, I'm aware of like the concept of survivorship bias here, right? But this is a show, and you have to use your real estate wisely, and they don't.
This is a show, and in its treatment of these things, it uses a broad stroke style, so these things kind of add up.
Yeah.
Not saying you can't use broad strokes, they're fine. This is a fucking mixed level action program. Your mistakes will also be loud.
Speaking of loud mistakes, do you know where they eventually go with all of this, right? Because it's not very far. The show seems to treat Amon like an extremist bringing attention to a real problem. Okay. Fine. Let's pretend that there exists a problem just because they told me. I don't believe
we'll give him his Magneto points.
Just for the benefit of the doubt, let's say that there is such a problem.
His helmet is equally cool.
What is done to address this inequality in the wake of Amon's defeat? I'll tell you. They elect a non-bender president to the United Republic, and then the issue is dropped for good.
Oh my God.
And I have no further comment.
It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I just want an Avatar version of Stephen Colbert with his arm wrapped around Lou Ted pointing at him. It makes my fucking soul smile. So it's my favorite thing in this show that isn't the action. It's just the moment they say they elected their first non-bender president. Also, they have presidents now.
It's just like we all know that when Barack Obama was first elected on November the 4th, 2008, that day is the day that racism died in America, and we all know that to be true.
And I'm left here to wonder, in Season 2, when Korra cocks up and the spirit world gets 9/11 into our world, are there people walking around saying, "Thanks, Obama"? Is this the world we live in Avatar now? Is this where we're at?
I don't know, she spends the fucking course of the show getting people to fucking hate her, so I have to imagine someone at one point just says, "Thanks, Korra." Speaking of Amon, right, this series was going to live or die on how interested he ended up being, and thus it died. This is partly the fault of writing him like a J.J. Abrams style mystery box, like you were saying. Like, he is interesting because of what you don't know about him and what you imagine about him, by design. But once you start learning about him, the less interesting he becomes, because "My Dad Sucked" is just way the fuck too pedestrian a motive for someone with such an apparently complex worldview. And it doesn't even connect is the problem. Like, I just don't end up buying that my dad was a bender and he sucked, plus I have a tendency to want things to be fair, would add up to what we get. You have to basically come up with his ideology for yourself, which to me means that it doesn't exist in the first place. Like, this is a problem that they could have dodged had they, again, done the legwork and actually show us why it was so hard out there for non-benders.
It is a fascinating fuck up, because when I went through my first run of this show, And even when I was like rewatching it, I was just sort of all in on this guy. I said, hey, well, this part is really cooking here. Good job. All right, going for something a little more earthy than the Ozai thing. I admire the variation. And then, with all the weight they'd put on the mystery of his thing, and I think his revelation episodes bother me a little more. Because I think it could have even gotten a B with not even really even having a fucking answers. I think this is a case where the information you get is worse than where you started.
Like I was saying, the more you learn about him, the less interesting he becomes.
Like, if his literal fuck nuts early explanation thing is, yeah, the spirits totally fucking hate benders too, they taught me how to jick their jack, I would have rocked with it just on the sort of force of attitude and just the idea that maybe he'll just be like an elemental force of correction, the way that Ozai was the force of being a monarchist dickhead.
I think what I would have preferred...
like a Robespierre, like a flat, just out of nowhere Robespierre, would have been way easier to rock with than what we got.
Yes. They wanted to have it tie into, Korra awakening to, her past lives or whatever. So there had to be some sort of backstory thing, or I don't know which one kind of came first here when they were writing this. I'm trying to fucking parse it apart. I think they probably came up with his backstory first, and then found a way to relate it to Korra's backstory in that Aang's story, which is her backstory or whatever. That is the order that I bet it happened in, but that's just conjecture right there. But no, it would have been so much more interesting if we never learned his name. If he was just this dude from out of fucking nowhere who truly believed the things he did just because he believed them.
I agree with you there, and when it comes to that point for me, I guess the reason I say that even no answer would have been better is that I don't want to give this the weight of saying, I thought it was X, Y, and Z, because that's not really the problem here. The problem here is that what you put in this space that debatably didn't even need to be filled was bad enough to make the content behind it dumber.
Yeah, retroactively dumber, yeah.
And the content ahead of it, you are just painted into this corner, to which your solution is he wipes out his own makeup and everyone says, I no longer believe in communism.
Yeah, I want to maybe not give them points, but give them the benefit of the doubt and that they only had so much time to work with here.
That's one thing. I guess another angle is I think they aspired to these being problems that you can't karate kick your way out of.
I guess.
It doesn't really land there because he is revealed as a fraud because he got punched out a window. But I see the backroom conversation in my mind's fucking eye. Like the idea that he is beaten because the people turneth upon him and his brother turneth upon him.
Well, yeah, no, that's a problem. He's never beaten because his ideals are wrong. He's beaten because his ideals not necessarily are fake, but just he's beaten
I get what you're trying to get at. The flaws in his ideology don't sink him. Korra's inherent plucky hero 2 doesn't beat him. She gets a lucky hit in. His makeup comes off.
Like we're never his ideology is never given an answer, and then we're then left to wonder if there was any ideology to begin with, and why we've been fucking wasting our time talking about this the entire season, as they're not actually referring to a real problem near as I can tell, and it's
and you don't even really get the B grade. The goodness of the hobbits came through because again, her one lucky hit after. I want to say it was sort of 10 minutes of just the song Bangarang playing behind him and her sobbing in the corner. We'll get to Korra's booking later. No. I'm saving that. I'm putting that in the end.
That's gonna come later. I'm gonna mention it once or twice. Just seed it once or twice in this episode. But what we're going the big canonical conversation about is going to come later. I think this is a little bit apropos of nothing. I think a few of the issues that I have with the romantic subplot because we were sort of talking about this, is mitigated by the fact that they wrote the first book as a miniseries, right? They had only so much time to tell this story that in retrospect, I end up kind of wishing that that this plot had played out over a longer span of time. Like, it could have had the same results.
It puts them in an awkward place later. I don't think it damages this season, so maybe...
I think it damages this season.
That's just the base content being bad. It would have been bad. It would have been the inane things over a longer stretch of time. Like, I think the... Well, here's I don't think something wrong with that. I think that within the season, there's something wrong with these plots resolving to the point that they do. It puts them in an awkward position later because they're left with the well, what now kind of thing, and several of the answers are not the natural fit one might aspire to.
What I've always felt was kind of unfair about season 1, or at least season 1 as I was viewing it with other, people who were viewing it, is that I think people came down really fucking hard on Mako for perceived fuckboyism, right? So the question is, did he act like a fuckboy? A little bit, yeah. But I'm not about to blame the guy because he comes off as a dude who just ends up holding the bag at the end. Like, they needed to get him and Asami broken the fuck up by, like, episode 10, right? And the only way that they could think to do that was to write him like a fuckboy for an episode. It's like it's a fucking frame job. Like, it wasn't his fault. He got hijacked.
His fuckboy dub feels like the plot version of one of those Book of Job things, or whatever fucking Bible book. Just the plot or God parts the clouds and says, "Bring me your son." And everyone's like, "Look at what you fucking did." And he's just like, "But God told me to. The plot demanded it."
And then there's characters get hijacked a lot, but like that's one of the more egregious examples of characters getting fucking hijacked. But it becomes so fucking obvious. Like there in that one episode, right? It was at the end of the fucking pro bending arc.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's at the end of the pro bending arc, and the arc is ended by Amon attacking the arena, right? Making the entire fucking police force look like goddamn morons. By the way, in the process,
it is incredible how efficiently they can undermine someone's
like the equalists don't look smart for this. The cops just look fucking stupid.
Historic failure. Imagine if. Remember the Munich Olympics huge tragedy?
Mm-hmm.
That whole incident? Imagine if it happened because every officer in Germany just left their gun and baton at home that day.
Oh, they went to fucking lunch and they left their gun on the table of the fucking beer garden.
And that is how the clever equalist scheme scans for the Felicia in that moment.
And like it seems like they're not supposed to be more. They're supposed to be really like cool. Like they fucking had fucking Korra dead to rights in the first episode when they caught her, and Lynn is she's supposed to be real cool, right? And but no, they're just kind of sacrificed.
A lot of that.
They're sacrificed to the booking gods when the equalists attack, and then. Right? The equalists attack, they promise, yeah, we're going to do fucking, equalist 9/11. Just you fucking wait. It's not when they attack, it's when they promise to attack. Or they're going to say, we're going to do equalist 9/11. And then all of the fucking protagonists look like fucking morons out there. Where they're like, we should keep the arena open. They can't scare us.
It was incredible.
This is not how a fucking national security threat is answered.
When they do one of those... we don't negotiate with terrorist lines in an action movie, they usually don't mean we will cram a building full of targets. You won't do it. Buck, buck, buck. Buck, buck, buck. What they usually mean is we won't wire you $3 billion. And that's what makes the little line in the sand cool. Oh, not really that cool. It's kind of an overplayed moment in the first place.
This and the fucking Mako thing are, I think, the two most egregious examples of character hijacking in book 1. But they are small when put up against seasons 2 and 4, especially 2. The episode we have about season 2, book 2, whatever, by the way, is going to be fucking 2 hours long because they're. I think it's probably one of the worst seasons of television that I've watched all the way through.
I'm going to apologize in advance because I am a loudmouth person. with strong opinions about the second book of this show. At some point, I will say something about some protected category of person, and I will forget to edit out in relation to Book 2 of The Legend of Korra. So I will...
We're gonna do our best to try not to.
I would like to preemptively apologize to racial groups, various disabilities, various sexualities, philosophies, nationalities. Am I leaving anything out? Occupations. There are a lot of trapdoors that I don't think I can stop myself from running headfirst into.
People with jobs, people who do jobs, jobbers, you could call them.
You could call them jobbers.
I think, but the point I'm trying to make is that all of the issues present in the series going forward begin in small ways in season 1.
The foundation.
And season 1 is, I guess, technically the second best season of this show.
I would call the aspirational failures of Book 1 superior to the sea of mediocrity that Book 4 leaves us waddling in, yes.
Yes. Yeah, I would say so.
I would also say that this just introduces all the fun, cool new things, and that is worth something.
It got a whole lot of novelty points, certainly, yeah.
Whereas, because like this one's rival for the second best season is 4, with third just being the best one.
And second just very clearly being the worst one.
And
for a couple of years though, I was so fucking butt mad about what they did in season 4 that I was insisting that it was the worst season. I think
fresh pain means something. Fresh pain means something.
I think if you lay them both out on the table, season 2 is almost certainly worse. But I think we might be getting ahead of ourselves right now.
It's very possible. It's very possible.
Well, the reason that I hated season 4, and I'm gonna try and like tie this into something, is because season 3 made so many like fucking second term promises that season 4 then broke. And that is, again, the main thing with The Legend of Korra is that it makes these promises and that it never fucking delivers on them. And it's not immediately apparent. And what I want to talk about is the halfway point of season 1, right? Or right after the halfway point of season 1, the episode, The Aftermath.
This is the fault line.
We found it.
I have been wrong about this show for so many years, thinking that everything fell apart during the flashback episodes towards the end. No, the Aftermath is just when the alcohol poisoning sets in and the party goes downhill.
Yes, I think at the time it came out, right, when we were watching this thing live, because oh boy howdy was I ever watching this series live. It just felt a little bit off. That's odd that happened just now. There was a whole lot of that reaction, right? But in retrospect, this is just where all of the problems present in the season, like that are already there, are just coming home to roost, or they're starting to come home to roost.
It's fun that this show introduced a athletic thing at its root, because this episode is when the idiot ball comes out in force, and everyone is just shooting threes with the idiot ball. And there are the interpersonal idiot balls that get thrown into the romantic plots. They're just like competency based. Do you think that guy with the rocket launcher down the street is a terrorist or not? Idiot balls that get launched into thinking characters' faces. There is the baffling whatever is going on with the equalist philosophy and Sato.
Yeah, I want to talk about Sato because he is at the core of why this episode is so awful. So, the twist that he is an equalist, it's about how that is handled. Because it's just like a really like very clear cut case of just not great writing. Like first what they do first, right, is they tell you this guy Hiroshi Sato, right? Mm-hmm. He's an equalist, and I'll tell you why. It's because his wife was killed by a bender.
Could I put a pause on your point here?
Sure.
Because here's why I fucking hate that. And it's relatively crisp and quick. Mm-hmm. When Amon is giving his fake backstory, which you know is propagandistic bullshit as he says it, he says, my family was killed by a firebender. And you are meant to say, okay, yeah, bullshit, and roll forward. 3 episodes later, we come to this dumb fuck. And he looks screen, my family was killed by a firebender. And we're about to take it with full dramatic seriousness and way like, oh, you cockbags. You are vomiting into your own shoes right now. Proceed.
There might be something to be said with for context, but yeah, that's a good point that you make. So what they do is that they tell you, yeah, he's an equalist. This is why, right? And then this is presented to him. Aha, gotcha. And then he's like, oh, no, I'm not. And you, the viewer, is supposed to be like, what? Then who could it have been? And then mere minutes later, it all turns out to be fucking true. Now, the way you want to write a twist like this is that maybe they were correct in their initial assumption, right? That, yeah, this guy is an equalist, right? And it's, what they were wrong about was the motive, right? And that is what ends up throwing them off or something like that, right? You could do, for example, like, he is an equalist, as suspected, but instead of resentment over his wife's murder, like, I don't know, he grew up hearing awful stories about the war from his parents, and they were convinced it was all the fault of Benders, and this becomes part of his ideology growing up.
This is how you make something character-driven instead of random event-driven.
Well, this is just an example, and I'm not trying to fanbook a better season, There Be Dragons, but you see what I'm saying is that when they give you his affiliation, his motives, and then just throw you off the trail for a second before confirming, yes, everything we just told you at the beginning of this episode was true, it's not a plot twist so much as this is a spoiler. It's like someone telling you that they're going to throw you a surprise party.
Yeah.
And everyone looks like an idiot in this episode, too. For just being led around by the nose by the fucking, twists and turns.
Spoiler is good
because
I didn't have a one-word summary for a broken mystery plot.
The spoiler, yeah.
A mystery plot to solve a mystery you know the answer to for 20 minutes.
They could even have done a thing where they know this about him, but that's not good enough because they have to prove it or something like that, and that becomes the challenge. But they don't do that. They're just thrown off the trail for 3 minutes.
Now, the reason that this matters is because of what it does to the emotional gears of the episode. Like, fuck the whatever cinema sins aspect of it, but the thing is, the dramatic pin of the episodes becomes Korra believes this. Mako sides with his girlfriend by default.
Yeah.
Asami is in the corner of the room watching the black avatar have sex with her wife, whatever. And that's like the emotional sake of the episode. So then the second layer is also fucked. And the way that they execute these moments of, the sort of dissension of trust was just not working on its own, and it's built on a rickety foundation, so then I'm even more annoyed. And then my blood pressure is high enough that by the time the steampunk robots come in, I think I would think they were cooler if they came in before or after this episode.
I want to talk about the steampunk robots. I've got some fucking notes about those.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a nitpick, and I'm trying not to nitpick in this episode.
Okay. We've hit all the big picture stuff though, so I think we can.
So this is just like shit I didn't like, right? The presence of mechs in this show always felt very fan servicey to me, and I was never more than lukewarm on them. Like, I have this little buzzing noise that goes off in my head whenever I sense a show is trying to bribe me with superficial elements that I'm meant to like, so that I don't pay as much attention to its shortcomings. It's why I'm extremely wary of pantsuit shots in anime, and why I'm equally suspicious of stuff that's meant to be totally sick, bro. Don't you like your robots? Don't you like your electric power fists? Shit like that. The climax of the 4th season was the culmination of all of this, by the way.
I have an alarm that blurs for that.
At the risk of getting ahead of myself.
It makes me sound like a way worse person.
Mm-hmm.
Because mine is a little simpler. It's just, am I being treated like a contemporary Doctor Who fan? Like, are they thinking, okay, they bring out the sonic screwdriver and they're gonna fucking cream themselves?
I think, yeah, I don't know. I think you have sort of the same problem as I do. It's just sort of like coming from a different place, maybe. Yeah, it's where I feel like they're treating me like an idiot. I feel like the show is treating me like an idiot by being like, he loves robots. He'll eat this shit up.
Also, something they never quite figure out and this goes back to, it is ultimately an action show, and all punches matter. But when you bring in these robots, and you haven't necessarily mastered the art of making their movements or manner of movement or just manner of fighting quite as engaging to watch, you're just losing points that there could be some perfectly good karate in this scene, is all I'm saying.
They're doing the same grappling hooks that the regular Equalists do.
Like, do you know how well trained we are as audience members? If her father had taken out a pair of nunchucks, you would not have heard a goddamn complaint about it in this episode.
That would have been the sickest shit.
You never understood, Asami. Then you just game of death for 6 minutes. I don't even fucking care.
All right, I want to arrive at Korra right about now. Just Korra as a character, because I think the character Korra as a character exits the first season relatively still intact and unassassinated. Yeah. Trust me, that assassination is coming. She's not long for this world. But there are issues present, as I've been saying, in this first season that get worse in subsequent seasons. This is kind of the crux of like the biggest problem that you have with this show, and it's a big problem that I have with the show too, which is she seems to have way more trouble in a fight at times than she perhaps should. And I'm putting it very lightly.
I'm saving it. I'm not even getting into it here.
It's
just true. I'm just gonna say that is true.
That is true. Now I'm foreshadowing, what you're gonna have in the 4th episode of this little series here. Like, you can forgive a few of the big L's that she takes in the season because of the circumstances surrounding them. Usually it's because she's caught off guard by some heretofore unknown element, like, oh shit, Equalist can chi block. Oh shit, Tarlok's a bloodbender, etc. Like, those losses. The losses stop just short of feeling like bullshit. At worst, she just feels like she's really fucking easy to like surprise or take advantage of or whatever. I don't know. It feels like she could maybe be a little bit smarter, right? But usually it's not to the degree of Randy Orton is distracted by the Singh brothers again. Oh no, here comes Jinder Mahal behind him.
It was. How many months was
Again,
that? How many months was that?
It's the same fucking match, I think, at 5 different pay-per-views. I was watching a lot of wrestling in 2017. Not a great year for Raw, gotta tell you.
Not a great year for Raw.
It might have been SmackDown.
A very Book 2 of Korra year for Raw.
I think it was SmackDown. I think the WWE Championship was on SmackDown at that point. Yeah.
No winning answer.
Anyway, the show goes on, though. And she keeps taking these fucking mountingly embarrassing L's to people she should have dead to rights before, because the plot just needs to move forward.
It's like a stroke. It just keeps happening.
And her credibility suffers for it. She's like, it's bad booking is what it is. And by book 4, even after she gets her groove back, she feels like a fucking parody of the Avatar concept. Like, what if someone could bend all the elements, but they were really bad at all 4 of them?
It really gets kind of entertaining to me. And when I say entertaining, what I really am...
Like the meme kind of way?
No, what I really am is just doing that thing where I'm saying, haha, you can't hurt me because I'm actually laughing. It's actually funny to me that you insulted me like that. I am above the fray of this flame war. It is entertaining in that sense.
I've got one final point that I want to make, and this is like kind of a broad thing, right?
All right. Bring in your hose, bring in your bullets.
So the driving question of The Legend of Korra, all 4 seasons ask the same question, and give you different scenarios for each. Give you different scenarios each time.
The big spiritual question mark there.
Does the world still need the Avatars? That is the big question. That's a big question, President, that hangs over every single conflict in this show. And it's a good question. It's like a good idea for a big narrative through line. But this ties back to what I was talking about earlier, is that we never get a satisfying answer. Like, we get all of these arc villains, and I guess the idea is there's always going to be people like this, the Avatars need to stop them. But A, that's facile, given how complex the issues they play at wanting to talk about are. And B, we're never really shown why it needs to be the Avatar specifically. It says nothing meaningful when Amon is defeated by a bender, and even less meaningful when he himself is a bender.
I'm going to give them a little more short-term credit and a lot less long-term credit on this point.
All right, so what's this rope?
To me, I think that in each phase of the show, they lay out a clear answer, which is yes, yes, no, yes. To me as well, the logic behind and moments behind these answers suck so fucking bad that I do not buy their answer to this question. And the little things that they threw in to try to throw in doubt to each season's answer until they throw it in makes it just seem like they're fucking wrong. And I'm not even saying there's an inherently right or wrong answer to this question, because the Avatar is a made-up thing that they made up.
Mm-hmm.
But everything that they put inside the gumbo is making it taste like toothpaste, because they dumped a carton of toothpaste into their fucking gumbo.
All right, so illustrate your point insofar as season 1.
All right, so season 1. The basic idea is that the Avatar is supposed to bring balance to everyone, and that includes people outside of this elemental, like, square.
Yeah.
And these people start doing something for themselves, but they've gone too far. And then she beats up one guy who was a bender.
A bender the entire time.
Oh my god, the fucking moral equation.
That's what I was saying. It's like Amon is a bender, and he's defeated by a bender, and none of what the actual point had to do with,
So
makes my fucking head hurt.
On a direct textual, clear level, the world needs the Avatar. If you are watching this, your human instinct, because they told you the story wrong, is just the words, my ass. Also, a problem is that they keep throwing the Avatars, not so much into second season, because they come to an entirely different shitty route to resolution.
Oh, man.
But the Avatar's, like, final resolution of these things in 1, 3, and 4 are all things that, like, Lin Beifong could have done if she got a lucky shot in. Like, there's nothing that Korra achieves in season 1 that Bolin couldn't do on his best day.
Perhaps. In
Which is
in an effort to be fair, I'm trying to figure out if you can apply this to if you could apply that sort of reasoning to the original series.
No, because they have way more clarity on the spiritual issue in the original series.
Okay, sure.
And how much of this is because of, like, spiritual drift within these empires. Like, Aang resolves, like, the ultimate final bullet point problems, like, I'll take 2 big points, fighting Ozai, or just that whole water tribe siege bullshit.
Okay, sure.
By essentially coming to terms with these spiritual issues, like helping, help resurrect X-Spirit, Communist Moon, whatever. He's a kaiju now, way better execution than the second thing. Final book of part 1, the elevation of this internal murder question to this external spiritual problem. He gets his fight solution through this whole lion turtle bullshit, whatever thing. That is very different than giving Amon a stunner and his makeup comes off, punching Kuvira in the tits, and then she gives up. Or an admittedly kind of sweet fight against Zahir, but in that season, they are bending toward the Avatar thing is obsolete because they want to set up tension for the last one.
The last one, yeah.
So in each of those scenarios, basically the root of the Avatar thing, which I guess maybe they backed off from this because they failed so spectacularly in season 2, is that you are the bridge between the spiritual and physical worlds. And just another axis of balance. And that is just not why things ultimately happen in 1 and 4.
They never expressed that.
Yeah. And it is expressed in 2, but there are external problems.
2 has other problems. 2 has other problems. I guess, I don't know, maybe this is a credit where it's due sort of thing with 2, and that, like, yeah, I guess they do answer, does the world need the Avatar and why? Oh man, but what the Avatar actually is, you're not gonna like that.
Yeah, that is a relatively clean way
but
of putting it.
we'll talk about that later. There's one last point that I want to raise, and it's a positive one. I'm gonna kind of compliment Sandwich this one, because I came in with the positive. I'm gonna end with some positive too. I am aware that I'm putting a children's show under a microscope right now. Like, I'm aware that this series is aimed at an audience that was half my age when the fucking thing was airing 10 years ago. Though it never delivers on its promises, I do think that The Legend of Korra does a good job of interviewing the viewers in its target demographic, kids, to the idea of ideology. Like, when I was 9, all I knew about Marxism and the socialist revolutions of the 19th and early 20th centuries was that Russia used to have a different name. Like, that was it. And now here I am, and there are a few things as important to my own ideology than the socialist revolutions of the 19th and early 20th centuries and the writings of certain intellectuals present at that time. I mostly had to learn all about myself. So that Korra at least introduces young viewers to these ideas, gets them ready to think about how complicated the world and its history are. There's something to be said for that. I think that's kind of neat. That is the credit that I'm going to give the show kind of on the whole. That is the net positive.
I will put that junior mint on its tongue with the reservation that I defy you to take Udalok's ideology past the words Catholic strawman.
Yeah, I do. Again, season 2 is unforgivably awful. Like, I think any sort of praise that I give this series is going to have to come with a little asterisk, and at the bottom of the page it says not season 2.
Fucking wild. Anyway, this has been part 1 of our long-promised quartet of Korra backdrop episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've enjoyed having you. I hope you have an excellent week, unless you are dismayed at the election results, in which case you can suck it from the back. Not the side, not the front, just the back.
All right, yeah, this has been Weeaboo Hell. It's been Weeaboo Hell. I am Sam Legault.
And I am Denard Dale. You can go to weeaboohell.com. Weeaboo Hell has a slightly more frequently used Instagram, getting more active Twitter. You can dig those up. You can go to, I already said weeaboohell.com, didn't I? All right. Peace. Fuck 12.
Fuck 12.